G'day, it's fugitive Australian journalist Shane Dowling from the website kangaroocourtofaustralia.com. Now, war crimes whistleblower David McBride will be sentenced next Tuesday, which is the 14th of May 2024. Now, he had his sentencing hearing yesterday, Monday the 6th of May 2024, but the judge has obviously reserved his decision. So next Tuesday at 9:30am in the ACT Supreme Court, he'll be sentenced. The prosecutor is asking for a jail term of at least 2 years or more. They're saying 2 years is basically the minimum, or they're saying that even 2 years isn't sufficient. But I'll read you out some of that details in a minute. But it's worth noting Bernard Cleary. Bernard Cleary is a whistleblower. Well, he's actually not a whistleblower. He's a lawyer for the whistleblower. And he got stitched up for some charges in relation to the Australian government bugging the East Timor government when they were negotiating oil reserves, ownership of the oil reserves. So Bernard Cleary, his matter was actually withdrawn. The Attorney General, Mark Dreyfus, 2022, ordered the Director of Public Prosecutions to withdraw the charges. And at any point, Mark Dreyfus could have done exactly the same for David McBride, given he blew the whistle on war crimes. And we've got to ask, were there war crimes in Afghanistan? And the answer is clearly yes, because an inquiry found there were legitimate evidence of war crimes, and also the Federal Court of Australia found that Ben Robert-Smith committed war crimes on the balance of probabilities. And a lot of that investigation, the reporting, came from David McBride's leaks. So you can say what you want about him, but he is a whistleblower, end of story. So I'll read you out an article in relation to Bernard Cleary from 2022 on the Conversation website, because that gives you an understanding of the sort of precedent. That would be the key precedent to be used when determining what sentence David McBride should get. An article on the Conversation from July 2022 starts off, the Albanese government has acted quickly to abandon the prosecution of Bernard Cleary, who was charged in relation to the leaking of information about Australia's alleged spying in Timor-Leste, which is East Timor. And the reason the article says the government acted quickly is because they came into power in May 2022, so they only waited a month, if that. An article goes on to say, Attorney General Mark Dreyfus said that in taking this decision, I have had careful regard to our national security interest and the proper administration of justice. It is my view that the prosecution of Mr. Cleary should end. He said the decision to discontinue the prosecution was informed by the government's commitment to protecting Australia's national interest, including our national security and Australia's relationships with our close neighbours. Cleary, 77, is a former ACT Attorney General. He was a lawyer of the whistleblower known as Witness K, a former Australian Secret Intelligence Service, ASIS officer. Witness K received a suspended sentence in 2021 after pleading guilty to conspiring with Cleary to reveal information about the alleged spying. So Witness K never got a jail sentence. He got a suspended jail sentence, and Cleary had the charges dropped. So let's compare that to David McBride, with a prosecution of asking for 2 years plus jail sentence. Now, the Sydney Morning Herald reported on May 6, defence whistleblower David McBride shared confidential documents with journalists because of arrogance and the pursuit of personal vindication rather than a pure sense of duty, the prosecution argues, as it calls for the former military lawyer to be jailed for more than 2 years. While defence barrister Stephen Odgers, SC, told the ACT Supreme Court on Monday his client was motivated by exposing what he believed to be criminal behaviour by military top brass. Crown Prosecutor Patricia McDonald, SC, said McBride never articulated through official complaints what the actual criminality was before leaking the files. Well, that's a ridiculous argument. That's splitting their hairs by the prosecutor. Oh, because he didn't name the actual criminality, therefore, he should go to jail. The article goes on to say McBride pleaded guilty in November to 3 charges, including theft of Commonwealth property and breaching the Defence Act, after his legal team failed to convince Justice David Mossop to allow them to argue before a jury that while he disobeyed her orders, he had a duty to act in the public interest. So there you have it. They take away his defence, so he's forced to plead guilty, and then they do a song and dance about it. Oh, look, he pleaded guilty. Now, the article goes on to say the classified documents leaked to journalists by McBride led to a series of reports alleging Australian Special Forces troops committed war crimes in Afghanistan, contrary to what McBride had insisted the story was. The 4-year Brereton inquiry later uncovered credible information about 23 incidents of potential war crimes, which involved the killing of 39 Afghans and the cruel treatment of 2 more between 2005 and 2016. Odgers told the court McBride believed senior Australian Defence Force officials were baselessly investigating soldiers over war crimes as a public relations exercise. Whether or not it existed, he believed it probably did, Odgers said, adding to his client's mental health struggles had potentially influenced his perception. He believed what he was doing at the time was lawful because it was in the public interest. McDonald, who's a prosecutor, said the Australian Federal Police have found no evidence of criminal wrongdoing after McBride contacted them with his suspicions and hadn't waited for the outcome of an investigation by the Inspector General of the Australian Defence Force before going to the media. While McBride's lawyers have proposed options such as a suspended jail sentence and an intensive corrections order, McDonald said only prison would suffice. Anything less would fall outside the appropriate range of punishment, she said. A period of imprisonment of 2 years doesn't reflect the seriousness of the offending, she said. McDonald said claims of McBride's honesty could not be reconciled with his guilty plea of an offence involving theft. Well, the prosecutor, McDonald, one, is ignoring what happened to Bernard Collaery, where the charges were dropped, and witness K, who got a suspended sentence for leaking government secrets. And she's using McBride's guilty plea after they knocked out his defence, and he had no real option but to plead guilty. She's using that guilty plea as a justification. Oh, he's not honest. He pleaded guilty. Well, he had to plead guilty because you knocked out his defence, and half the trial was going to be behind closed doors anyhow. So they're going to have a secret hearing to stitch him up, and then he's forced to plead guilty because you get a reduced sentence, I think, if you plead guilty. I don't know about the ACT, but I know in New South Wales you get a 25% reduction. I don't know if you have to plead guilty early or whatever, but you get a reduction by pleading guilty. Because he was basically forced to, because they knocked out his defence and they're going to have a secret hearing, she's doing a big song and dance about it, the prosecutor. Oh, look, he pleaded guilty. He's dishonest. They have no shame, these prosecutors. You know, David McBride's potential jailing, if he does go to jail, well, that's all on Prime Minister Anthony Albanese. They were good enough to get rid of the charges in relation to Bernard Collaery, but why are they stitching up David McBride? Bernard Collaery, they had pressure from the East Timor or Timor-Leste government to drop those charges. It was going to be a hugely embarrassing prosecution because the government were caught red-handed spying on a poor country, one of the poorest countries in the world, to try and rip them off their oil reserves, which happened under Johnny Howard. But the government was going to continue with it. It would have been very embarrassing for the government, and Timor-Leste, their government was putting pressure on the Australian government to drop the charges, whereas David McBride, you got the US government putting pressure on the Australian government to jail him because they don't want all the dirty secrets from the Afghan war to be sort of made public by other potential whistleblowers. So in both cases, you've had foreign interference in the Bernard Collaery matter to drop the charges because it was hugely embarrassing for the Australian government. The Timor-Leste government probably would have been rocked up and given evidence for Bernard Collaery, whereas with David McBride, you got foreign interference from the US government to jail him. David McBride hasn't expressly said that, but he's certainly alluded to there being foreign interference. And I think during the court case, the government even said so to some degree. They're worried about the international relations, which can only be with the US. So if David McBride is jailed, well, that's going to be an issue at the next federal election, and Anthony Albanese will have to wear it for being too spineless to drop the charges. They're meant to protect whistleblowers, but what are they doing? They're jailing whistleblowers, and David McBride will be the first. And then you have the ATO whistleblower, Richard Boyle, having his life played with because he dared to blow the whistle on corrupt conduct at the Australian Taxation Office. And what does Anthony Albanese do? Nothing. He hounds him down for years. Make no mistake, Anthony Albanese hates whistleblowers just as much as Scott Morrison did. That is a fact, and it's a fact because we can see it happening in real life where Anthony Albanese and his government have done absolutely nothing for whistleblowers, even though they said they would. They're having the National Anti-Corruption Commission hearings in secret. It's a secret government just as much as the Scott Morrison government was. And this is going to be an issue for the next federal election for a fact. And it'll be even a bigger issue if David McBride goes to jail. And so it should be. And if David McBride is jailed, that's the government, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese and his government, sending a message, not just to David McBride, but to other whistleblowers. Shut your mouths. We don't like you. And we'll jail you if you open your fat mouth and shine a light on corruption. Now, I've done a couple of stints in jail. In 2017, I did 4 months for contempt. 2018, I did 4 months for contempt. There was meant to be 18 months with a non-parole period of 13 months, but I appealed and it got dropped to 4 months fixed. So I just did it straight 4 months, no parole. And I've got an outstanding arrest warrant to do 10 months jail in New South Wales because Channel 7 and 7 West Media, its parent company, instituted contempt proceedings against me. And they stitched me up for 10 months. They wouldn't transfer it to Queensland. They forced me to have that hearing over the internet via video link. So I'm in a position to talk about what's it like for people who shine a light on corruption going to jail. Well, the worst thing about it is the boredom. You get bored very quickly. And that's the worst thing probably facing David McBride, although I don't know how he'll handle it in jail. I didn't handle it too badly. It was fine the first time, you're on edge a bit. First time in jail, you don't know what's going to happen. If a fight will kick off or whatever. But the second time, well, boredom is what you're really faced with. And if I was to get arrested and sent back to New South Wales to do the other 10 months, well, the boredom's the biggest factor you got to deal with. And if David McBride was to get more than 2 years, which the prosecution are pushing for, he might have to do 12 months. He might get, say, 3 years with a non-parole period of 12 or 18 months or something like that. The reality is he should have had his charges dropped long ago. But you have a government who, like I said before, hate whistleblowers just as much as Scott Morrison did. They promised new laws to protect whistleblowers, but they failed to deliver on that. They failed to deliver on an open and transparent National Anti-Corruption Commission. They failed with their transparency all over the park. Anyhow, Kangaroo Court of Australia is independent media. I publish a website and a YouTube channel, and I'm 100% crowdfunded from viewers like yourself, so please support my Patreon account. Currently have 420 supporters donating $2,377 a month, and I need to almost double that to become financially viable. And you can donate any amount, $3, $5, $7, $10, $15, $20, $30, $40, $50 a month, whatever suits your budget. It all helps out in a big way. And the link for the Patreon account will be below this video on YouTube and also on my website. And please hit the like and subscribe button, and please share this video on social media. Other than that, thank you for your time and have a good day.